Moments ago, the Kremlin expressing openness over Ukraine war negotiations as efforts to reach a Gaza-style peace deal are rapidly gaining momentum. A White House official adding that a deal could come as soon as this week. Let's bring in Dan Hoffman, former CIA station chief in Moscow and Fox News contributor. Dan, great to be with you this afternoon. So this just sort of falls along similar lines of the effort to get peace in the Middle East. Axios reporting this: U.S. secretly drafting new plan to end Ukraine war. The plan's 28 points fall into 4 general buckets, sources tell Axios: peace in Ukraine, security guarantees, security in Europe, and future U.S. relations with Russia and Ukraine. Sounds encouraging on the surface, but while Putin talks a good game about peace, nothing we've seen so far indicates that he wants peace.
Yeah, you'll have to excuse me, John, for not being optimistic at all, and I base that on the decades I spent at CIA trying to see the world through the twisted KGB eyes of Vladimir Putin. If past his prologue, he's trying to use negotiations to curry some favor with the United States, make it appear falsely that Russia's interested in a diplomatic solution to this war, when in fact Russia continues to rain down hell on Ukraine. Just last night, a massive drone and missile barrage in a residential area in Ukraine. The timing is important. We've got sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil being implemented in about 3 days, and then the Senate has their secondary sanctions bill warmed up in the bullpen. The president said he's going to sign it. So that may also be something that Vladimir Putin is thinking about when he wants to try to run this KGB false disinformation operation against us to make us think that he might be interested in negotiations.
You mentioned these ongoing attacks. They were way out in the western part of Ukraine. Ternopil was the name of the town. This, as the Army Secretary Dan Driscoll and the Army Chief of Staff General Randy George are in Kiev to talk about, U.S. military cooperation, obviously, with Ukraine, but also the possibilities of a peace deal. But listen to this Reuters report from Ternopil. 19 killed, 66 wounded in heavy Russian attack on Ukraine, officials say. The upper floors of the residential building in Ternopil were torn away in the attack. Russia launched more than 470 drones and 48 missiles in the overnight attack, officials said. If Russia wants peace, if it's trying to make inroads in the Sloviansk region against the big fortress that Ukraine has put up there, why is it attacking targets that are close to Poland?
Yeah, and targeting Poland as well, John, with a sabotage operation at the Polish railway. Vladimir Putin has a 3-pronged tactical approach. We talked about the negotiations with the United States to try to deter us from giving Ukraine the military assistance Ukraine needs. Secondly, hybrid gray zone sabotage operations against Europe, violating Estonia's airspace with MiG aircraft and drone sightings in Norway and in Denmark and over Poland, and then concurrently keeping up the fight against Ukraine. I think Vladimir Putin has to be concerned about how he would wind down this war. Tell me how it ends, as General David Petraeus used to say about Iraq.
Yeah.
How does Vladimir Putin declare victory now? I think that would be very hard for him politically. He's also got to deal with 700,000 roughly troops, many of them criminals who would be re-entering the general population. Good luck with that. Shades of what the Soviet Union had to deal with after the war in Afghanistan, with which Vladimir Putin is very familiar from his days in the KGB.
So Steve Witkoff is the one who's the architect of this plan. He's been discussing it with, among other folks, the Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev, who runs Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund. Dmitriev expressed optimism about this, saying, quote, "We feel the Russian position is really being heard," which I guess they felt that wasn't being heard before. Real quick, decode that. What does that mean?
That's code for he's being sent on a diplomatic mission by Vladimir Putin. It's just part of the overall strategy for Putin to carry on the war. I'm sorry to have to say that, but I just don't see any evidence. Now, Director of CIA Ratcliffe, I think, is on the hook to decipher Putin's plans and intentions with all of the intelligence that we have gathered, and it'll be over to him to advise the president. in the event of some sort of a deal, it's got to be a good one that protects Ukraine's security, Europe's security, and by extension, the $1 trillion worth of trade we enjoy with Europe. We don't want to sign on to a bad deal. The last thing I'll say, John, I was in Hanoi when President Trump walked out of a bad deal with Kim Jong-un.
Yep.
The president can be a tough negotiator, as we all know, and he's going to have to look at this, whatever is produced, with real critical eye towards ensuring our national security.
I was on that trip, too. I'm amazed we didn't run into each other. Dan, good to catch up with you this afternoon. Appreciate it.
You too.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.